work at the touchscreen for the answers.
Okay, Week 17 has 16 games, 11 teams with a chance to make the playoffs, and there are 5 open spots. These are the 3 teams already in the AFC. You know the Chiefs have home field advantage, and Patrick Mahomes has taken the week off, and Cynthia Freeland, who has run all the numbers 10,000 times, has said that the model gives the Chiefs an 18% chance to make it back to the Super Bowl. Now, the rest of the AFC is kind of a mess. Here's what you got to know. One of these teams is not going to make it. The top 4, Tennessee, Miami, and Baltimore and Cleveland, are all in win-and-in scenarios. Indianapolis is going to need some help. There's a chance the Colts don't make it at 11-5. Now, if Indianapolis wins and Tennessee loses, then the Colts would actually be AFC South champions, and they won't be a wild card. We are going to give Indianapolis an 82% chance of making the playoffs. As for all these other teams, Baltimore has the best shot after all the simulations. We're going to give Baltimore a 92.5. Don't forget about the 0.5% chance of making the playoffs. That's the AFC. The NFC, Green Bay is 1 win away. Beat the Bears, and the Packers get home field, and you have to go to Lambeau in the NFC. We're going to give Green Bay a 30% chance to be the NFC champion and make it to the Super Bowl. The NFC wild card, one of these teams is not going to make it. Now, the Rams and the Bears have a better shot, the odds say, because they have 2 chances, right? They could get in with somebody else losing. So let's give the Rams an 82% chance of making the playoffs. Let's give the Bears a 67% chance of making the playoffs. The NFC East, really easy. Washington, win the game on Sunday night. Win Week 17, game 256 in Philadelphia, basically a 50-50 proposition. The Cowboys and Giants winner from 1 o'clock Eastern will be watching that game because they get in if Washington loses, roughly 25% for each, but we're going to give Dallas, the model says, a slightly better chance than the New York Giants. This is what the supercomputer, what the simulation says, run 10,000 times. This is your playoff bracket. You can note over there the team that's left out, the Miami Dolphins. Enjoy Week 17. Past performance not necessarily indicative of future games.
I feel personally attacked, but it is time to put the guys on the clock here. LT and Steve, keep in mind that these are quick hitters, okay? So I want you to make your point, and then we got to keep it moving. So we have 3 minutes we will put on the clock. Listen, that sounds like a lot of times, but it really isn't. So let's go. Let's put 3 minutes on the clock, and I'm going to start with you, LT. Who's the most dangerous team if they make the playoffs?
Yeah, it's the Colts. And the Colts have everything in the team that you need to make a deep playoff run. They have an experienced quarterback, a really good offensive line. They can run the football. They have weapons outside. And on defense, they can get it done on defense. That defense can travel. Now, they need to play better than they did last week in the second half, but I'm picking the Colts.
I have to go with the Tennessee Titans. They have A.J. Brown at the wide receiver position. They have Ryan Tannehill, who's playing out of his mind. And then they have the professional dream crusher himself, Derrick Henry, who is killing all the dreams of any DB defenders that inspire themselves to think about trying to tackle him. It just doesn't work out.
I get it. All right. Are you at home watching the clock? Good. Steve, I'm going to start with you here. The Dolphins are without Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's out Sunday after testing positive for COVID-19. How concerned are you for the Miami Dolphins?
I'm concerned for the Miami Dolphins like my savings and checking account that just doesn't work when you're trying to buy something that's beyond your spending limit. I am extremely concerned. I love what Brian Flores was doing with the hot hand, but he doesn't have his hot hand now available. I'm worried. I'm really worried.
Yeah, I'm concerned too, Steve, and it's really because they're playing the Buffalo Bills, and the Buffalo Bills are trying to secure that second seed, and they can score. So my message, my advice to Tua, throw the damn ball. Mama, pardon my French, but come on, Tua. They brought you there to throw the ball. Take me back to Alabama when you was throwing the ball down the field. I know you got that in you. Quit being so hesitant. Throw the football.
That's it. Let it go. Let it go. All right, last question. LT, which NFC East team would you least want to face? Is it the Cowboys or Washington?
Yeah, for me, it's the Cowboys because I lean toward the better offense. And I know they used to say that defense wins championships, and if that was still the case, I would pick Washington because they have the better defense. But that's no longer the case. Defense don't win championships anymore. It's all about the offense in the National Football League. And the Cowboys have an explosive offense that'll make anybody scared. And if they get in, more than likely, they're going to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which I believe they match up well against.
It ain't no reason why we should be talking about this game and this conference because they just don't deserve to be in the playoffs. Let's just be frank. But the team that I would like to see in the playoffs is the Washington football team because my boy Thomas Davis is going in retirement. This possibly is his last game, and I would like for him to continue to keep playing as long as he possibly can. That's why I'm picking the Washington football team. Only.
You know, you only went over by a couple seconds, but it was an ode to a friend, so I will allow it. I love it. Listen, this clock is very, very handy, you guys. Also, what are dads supposed to say if defense no longer wins championships? Now what are they going to do with their New Balance shoes? It's a very secure dad joke. Defense wins championships. My dad still says it to this day. All right, guys, thanks. Listen, we have 16 NFL games on Sunday, 13 playoff seeds still up for grabs, and one place to get you ready. Friday, NFL's Total Access is your complete viewer's guide to Week 17. Game picks, score predictions, stat projections, and, of course, upset alerts. Who will end up in the playoff picture, and who's getting pushed out of the frame? But first, Steelers and Browns, Packers and Bears, Washington and Philly. Week 17 isn't just about playoff and positions, it's about bragging rights. We'll break down the undeniable drama of the rivalry game next on NFL Total Access. Let's get to tonight's headlines presented by Lexus. Ian Rappaport reporting that Packers offensive lineman David Bakhtiari suffered a season-ending knee injury in practice today, a big blow for the Packers offensive line as they head into the playoffs. The Browns closed their practice facility for a second straight day after two more players tested positive for COVID-19. Cleveland also announced cornerback Denzel Ward was placed on the reserve COVID-19 list. The Browns-Steelers game is on as scheduled. Meantime, Browns receivers Rashard Higgins, Jarvis Landry, and Donovan Peoples-Jones have been activated from the COVID-19 reserve list. And the Dolphins will be without Ryan Fitzpatrick for Sunday's game against the Bills after he tested positive for COVID-19. According to Tom Pelissero, no other Dolphins players were considered high-risk contacts.
The NFL's oldest rivalry, Packers and Bears.
Those two cities don't like each other.
He said, Vince, I just want you to know you better have your team ready because we're going to kick your ass.
Winning isn't everything, but it's the only thing. Either you're first or you're last.
We're going to be here all day, baby. I like this kind of party.
Here's the Waller again. Right to the outside of the 40. To the 45 of nothing. He's going to have to throw in the end zone.
Hand off to Perry. Crushes the right side. Favre keeps it over the middle of the end zone. Diving grab.
You could have a complete losing season, but if you beat the Bears, that was your season.
We're going to separate the men from the boys. We're going to find out who really wants to play this game and who does not.
Yesterday, Mike Tomlin wouldn't even address the helmet incident that went down the last time Myles Garrett and Mason Rudolph faced each other. But there is no denying it's another layer to the already deep Steelers-Browns rivalry. This Sunday, another chapter will be added. Now, I've always had my popcorn popped and ready for these rivalry games. But I want to get your insight, Stephen, LT. Can you tell me what it's like to be in one of these matchups against a rival with a lot on the line? LT, you first.
Hey, it's incredible. You know, it's really fun. And I'll take you back to 2008 when I was with the San Diego Chargers. We were playing the Denver Broncos the last game of the season for the division title and to get to the playoffs. Now, let me remind you and take you back. Now, a month before that, Denver thought they had the playoffs wrapped up. They thought they had the division wrapped up. They had like a 3 or 4 game lead on us. Well, they started losing consecutive games while we went on a winning streak. That final game came down to us and Denver in this game. And you know what? We were so confident at that time. We knew we were going to win this game. In fact, before the game, during the warm-ups, we were talking noise to Denver. We were basically saying, hey, man, y'all done messed up. letting us back in the division. Now we about to whoop y'all tail tonight and win this division. And you know what? We whooped that tail. It was like 52 to, I don't know, 20-something.
You obviously were excited, LT, because in that highlight, you tried to catch the ball that was not thrown to you. You know,
that's a horrible highlight.
Hey, that's the highlight you picked. You know, back when I was at Carolina, we had to beat the Atlanta Falcons to get into the playoffs. We had started the season, I believe, 0-2 or 0-3. And we went on a run, but unfortunately I got hurt the game before against the New Orleans Saints. And I was not able to play. But the fact of the matter is we needed to go ahead and seal the win against the Atlanta Falcons, because if we did not, we would not have made the playoffs. And so those games come down to it, whether you play the New Orleans Saints or the Atlanta Falcons, those games always come down to the wire. And I love what the NFL has done by allowing that last week to be a rivalry game, because what generally happens, coaches get a little bit tighter. They coach you more. They emphasize plays. They bring plays out of the dungeon and the basement that they usually don't pick, because they know how significant this game is, and they got to bring stuff that they haven't brought either this year or they brought 4 or 5 years ago. So I love the creativity and the hunger that these teams and coaches utilize for Week 17 versus their rivals.
Hey, Steve, you guys was real creative back then, because you had a young Cam. Whoa, Cam.
We were creative, and that was when Chud really did a fantastic job, and he was so good he ended up going to Cleveland, and he got fired after that. But Chud is an outstanding, he's an outstanding offensive coordinator. You just have to have good players around you.
Yeah, I'm going to need the unedited transcripts of all that pre-game trash talk from both of those instances that you guys sent. Just send it to my email. It's fine. We'll look at it. But listen, some of these teams are going to need a little help, y'all. So let's break this down for everybody at home, because the Colts need a win plus a Jacksonville loss and a Miami loss or a Cleveland loss. I mean, it's just too much for the Colts right now. The Cowboys, of course, need a win against the Giants and a Washington loss. The Giants, conversely, also need a victory and for Washington to lose. So we are paying close attention to this. But guys, to the players, like, are y'all in there really scoreboard watching? I know I am. But what's going down, Steve?
Absolutely, we're scoreboard watching. Now, the coaches are going to say we're not. But the coaches don't run the scoreboard. And you'll see when fans were in there, if you are playing an early game and the team you're playing or you need to lose plays a little bit later, they will actually play the game and they will announce during the game what the score is. And it was really cool to see, I believe, the Buffalo Bills sitting around watching those games and making sure that they could get in. But I remember we were watching games on the scoreboard and looking at the score, because we knew our playoff lives depended on someone else screwing up or coming up short. So definitely watching the scoreboard.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. This is, one of my favorite times of the year, because players, we know what's going to happen or what should happen going into that last week, especially if you're in the playoffs. So if you're already in the playoffs and you waiting on a certain game to happen to know who you're going to play against, you're already thinking like, man, I think we should be playing such and such because they should win this game easily. I remember this game. Remember, Cincinnati was playing Baltimore, and Cincinnati needed to beat Baltimore in order for the Buffalo Bills to get into the playoffs. And they were waiting in the locker room to see what was going to happen. I remember thinking, there's no way Cincinnati is going to beat Baltimore. Buffalo's not going to the playoffs. Sure enough, later on that evening, it happened. So anything can happen in these situations. Players love the scoreboard watch, and it's just part of the National Football League last game of the season.
By the way, those locker room reaction videos, some of my favorites to watch the entire season because they are sweating just watching those last seconds of the game. All right, LT and Steve, thank you. Meantime, streaming on Friday is the latest episode of Total Access, the Locker Room podcast. New episodes will drop Wednesdays and Fridays on Apple, Spotify, and pretty much anywhere that you like to find your podcast. So we just talked about rivalries, and tomorrow's episode features Scott Pioli, who helped build a dynasty in New England. He sheds a little light on the Patriots' rivalry with the Jets.
This week on Total Access, the Locker Room.
I'm going to take us back to the 2001 draft. Light picks up and goes, "Hey, man, how you doing?" He goes, "Oh, doing great, doing great." I said, "Have you heard from anybody?" He goes, "Yeah, well, I'm actually on the other